tonight by former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, where the Trump's documents case is expected to be heard, Marcos Jimenez, as well as former federal prosecutor Jennifer Rogers. Thank you both for being here tonight, Marcos. We spent a lot of time together when Trump was himself being arraigned in Florida. Nauta himself has struggled to find an attorney in Florida. He did today with this woman, Sasha Didon, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. How does she fit into this picture and the sense of how well known she is in that circuit down there?
Well, she is not well known. In fact, if you look at the docket today in the case, you will see that the magistrate judge had to enter an order providing expedited procedure for her to obtain permission to file documents electronically. All attorneys in the Southern District of Florida must register for electronic filing, and she was not. So that indicates to me that she does not have substantial federal criminal experience. I believe that her experience has primarily been in the state court criminal process as a federal public defender in the state system. And of course, we know that she ran for office as a Republican politician.
Yeah, and of course, we know he has another attorney, Stan Woodward, who has been with him for most of this. She's just the legal-based counsel in Florida. Jennifer, we are told that Trump and Nauta both believe right now that taking these cases to trial is the right strategy for them. They are hopeful they'll be acquitted by a jury. Do you see that as the best strategy at this point, based on what you've read in that indictment?
Well, I don't know that it's the best strategy for Walt Nauta, because he likely has the option of cooperating against Trump, becoming a cooperating witness, pleading guilty, and getting a more lenient sentence at the end of the day. For Trump himself, I find it impossible to believe that he would plead guilty himself. So that leaves trial really as his only option. And I think he's probably hoping that some of his most fervent supporters will be on that jury and refuse to convict him. So I think that's his play. And so far, we haven't seen this divergence where Walt Nauta, takes his own interest as presidential. And maybe he will, maybe he won't. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, no indication of that yet. And Marcus, yesterday we got an unsealed additional portions of the search warrant that was used for that search that happened in Mar-a-Lago in August. And it says essentially that they saw Walt Nauta on surveillance footage moving more boxes out of the storage room than were ultimately brought back. If you're not Walt Nauta, what is your defense for something like that?
Well, I think Walt Nauta's defense is going to be that he did not know what the boxes contained, that he did not know anything about classified information. I think that's going to be difficult, because I think the indictment says at one point that he walked into the room and saw that there was a classified document that had spilled out into the floor. And his bigger problem is that the government alleges in the indictment that he lied to the FBI agents when they interviewed him about moving those boxes. That's a difficult, sometimes very difficult charge to overcome, because you have an FBI agent on the stand who's very credible, saying, we know this fact to be true, and he told us the opposite when we interviewed him. And that is a separate federal offense. That by itself, if you're convicted for that, results in a felony conviction. I think Walt Nauta's hope here is that somehow the jury will have compassion on him because he simply was a worker for Donald Trump. And maybe his ultimate hope is that if Donald Trump is reelected, that he'll be pardoned if he's convicted. And there's nothing stopping for Donald Trump, if he's reelected, if he's reelected, President Trump in his second term could easily pardon Mr. Nauta if he's convicted.
And you make a good point about the picture that Nauta sent. That was to another worker at Mar-a-Lago that we know was also interviewed. It was Five Eyes Intelligence that had spilled out on the ground. Jennifer, though, returning to the reporting that we had at the top of the show, this is from me and from the rest of our reporting team on this, about Jack Smith having this renewed interest. We were told it's kind of been there all along, but people are being asked about it recently, about that insane Oval Office meeting that happened, even by Trump standards, probably one of the craziest meetings that happened in the Oval Office. What do you think when you hear that is something that Jack Smith and his team have also focused on?
It strikes me, Caitlin, that if they are headed towards a broad conspiracy indictment against Trump and others in relation to the attempts to overturn the election, that's the sort of evidence that they would be interested in, because they're going to want to set out not only these individual strands of the conspiracy about the fake electors and the improper pressure on state election officials, state legislatures, Mike Pence, and so on, but they're going to want to set out kind of how it all came together and who was applying that pressure. So the renewed interest in that says to me, as they kind of come to charging decision time, maybe they're leaning in that direction, and we'll see a broad conspiracy indictment instead of one or more smaller indictments for some of these more discrete parts of the conspiracy.
So, Jennifer, if you're bringing in a Rudy Giuliani or Sidney Powell or someone who was there, which I should know, we don't think that Sidney Powell has talked to the special counsel's team, what kind of questions are you asking about that meeting?
Well, they will have asked him questions under a proffer agreement, so that protects Rudy Giuliani from those statements being used against him. But they'll just ask him everything. I mean, obviously, the obvious things, who was there, what was said, and all of that. But then they'll want to know the rest of it. So what did you do afterwards? What do you know about what other people did? Kind of not only what was talked about, but then what were the action items and who actually executed those as they try to fill in what happened here to make this case.
Marcos Jimenez, Jennifer Rogers, thank you both for your expertise tonight.
Thank you.